Welcome to Treon's Realm. Today we're going to take a look at the physical version of Borderlands 3 Ultimate Edition for the Nintendo Switch. I'll be honest, this has been a difficult one to get details on. The publisher was suspiciously quiet all the way until release in terms of game details and file requirements. Now when it comes to performance of the game, I'll say that this is pretty much in the range of other PS4 and Xbox One ports. It may not be quite up to par with something like, say, Doom or Witcher 3, but it's close overall. On the flip side, I will definitely say this isn't nearly as good of a port as something like, say, Nier Automata or Persona 5. But given that this was designed specifically for systems like the PS4 and the Xbox One, I'm actually shocked that they decided to even put this onto the Switch. I thought the Borderlands Ultimate Collection was about as far as they would go with it. I will say the graphics are a little bit rough in terms of the texture quality, and the game is pretty playable, but I did notice some serious frame rate hiccups at certain points. I don't think they have this as a locked 30 FPS. This feels like it's an uncapped frame rate. Now I'm hoping for fans of the series that the game performance will be further optimized in any potential future updates. When it comes to the actual physical version of Borderlands 3, it's a bit of a mess overall, but not nearly as bad as the physical packaging states. So not nearly as bad as the previously released Borderlands Legendary Collection, due to everything at least being tied to the physical cartridge instead of the one-time use digital code with that collection. That means if you do happen to buy this one pre-owned later down the road, you will have access to all the stuff for digital download. Now, publisher Take-Two, or 2K, Take-Two is the parent company of 2K. They decided to keep quiet about the physical version all the way till release, going as far as releasing box art that was missing the normal blue and white bar on the cover, stating that the game would require internet and additional microSD storage. As a result, the current product pages for major online retailers like Amazon, GameStop, Best Buy, and Walmart, they all feature this incorrect box art. And they're also all missing the digital requirements, which is not a good look. Even more confusing was the fact that the back of the game box states that the physical version would require 62 gigs of additional storage, which caused an uproar online among many Switch owners, for obvious reasons. Now, because of this, the Borderlands Twitter account had to release the actual storage requirements on the night of October 5th, literally the evening before the game's release on October 6th. According to the developers, they had to submit a file size at packaging time, but they kept working to optimize the game further until the release date. If this is true, it's impressive that they managed to condense the game from over 62 gigabytes down to less than 24 gigabytes. Even more impressive is that the game requires over 100 gigabytes on PS4 and Xbox One, which means that they managed to shave off over 75% of the storage requirements from the previous versions. Regardless of how you feel about the game, this is damn impressive work. They also stated that the game was set up on the Switch so you can install each DLC individually, which is nice for players with limited space on their Switch. So with the physical version, once you download the base patch that's required for the cartridge, you could choose to completely skip certain parts of the DLC and only download specifically what you want if you're running out of space on your system. Unfortunately, even the game's eShop page still has incorrect information relating to the storage requirements, which further adds to the confusion. In the fine print, the eShop listing still claims that the game needs 29.59 gigabytes to install everything. In reality, the full game with every DLC is 23.5 gigabytes digitally. So as you can see, this is a bit of a confusing situation because we now have 3 separate sets of information and only one of them is actually true and they were provided directly by the developer. Now we're going to do a quick breakdown of all of the storage requirements for the game. Now when it comes to the Borderlands 3 base game, this is the core game without any of the DLC. That file size comes in at 8.5 gigabytes. That's the eShop version. If you put in the cartridge, there is a patch that it is going to prompt you for as soon as you start it up, and that patch is 5.3 gigabytes in size. That means we're looking at about 3.1 gigabytes on the cartridge itself. The version code on the back of the cartridge ends in 000, and this has version 1.0 of the game on cartridge. Once you install the 5.3 gigabyte base patch, the game is updated to version 1.0.1. And at that point, once you get to the main screen of the game, you will see there's an option for downloadable content. There are 7 major DLCs that you can download. There's Moxie's Heist of the Handsome Jackpot that comes in at 1.3 gigabytes. Guns, Love, and Tentacles comes in at 1.4 gigabytes. Bounty of Blood comes in at 1.6 gigabytes. Psycho Krieg and the Fantastic Fustercluck, that one comes in at 959 megabytes. There's the Designer's Cut at 288 megabytes. The Director's Cut, which is the beefiest of the DLCs, comes in at 4.8 gigabytes. And lastly, they have the additional voiceover languages, which is 4.6 gigabytes. I find myself forgiving a developer a little bit more if they put everything else onto the cartridge but have to leave a voice pack off. But I could understand where a person who wants it complete on cart wants this information on there as well. When it comes to the physical cartridge, I have personally tested the base cart with my Switch in airplane mode on an account with no Nintendo Switch Online account. And I can confirm that the game at least starts and allows you to play the early part of the game without the base patch. Now, I would like to thank Twitter user MetroidFreak21 as he further tested the game and discovered that you can only complete the first 3 missions before you are required to download the base patch to continue playing. If you try to go beyond the 3 missions, the game will state travel unavailable. Once the 5.3 gigabyte base patch is applied, you can continue the game with no problem. Now, the digital version of the game with all DLC except for the additional languages comes in at 18.9 gigabytes. I would like to thank Twitter user Xenolix98 for the information on the digital file size. Now, the physical version of the game with all DLCs except for the additional languages comes in at 15.8 gigabytes. Breaking everything down, as I mentioned earlier, this means that the data actually on the cartridge is 3.1 gigabytes. Now, what's really weird is that Switch carts generally have color coding to the cartridge board to indicate that the games use 1, 2, or 4 gigabyte chips, or a different color for 8, 16, and 32 gigabyte chips. When it comes to Borderlands 3 on the Switch, the cartridge color seems to indicate that it uses at least an 8 gigabyte cartridge, but everything I could find in my testing indicates that there is only 3.1 gigabytes of data on the physical version, and the game should have been on a 4 gigabyte cartridge. This leads me to believe that there was a possible error when the cartridge went to manufacturing. Now, if this is true, that means that there's potential for future print runs to correct this mistake in either a positive or a negative way for physical Switch collectors. This means that if it sells well enough and they do future print runs, they could switch to a 4 gigabyte cartridge, or they could go the other route and put more of the game onto an 8 gigabyte cartridge. As it stands now, it's hard to recommend this version for players who want a physical version on the Switch, unless they potentially fix this in later print runs. Sadly, Take-Two and in turn 2K is one of the worst publishers on the Switch when it comes to physical games, so I'd be wary of their games if you are a collector like myself. What do you think of the Borderlands 3 Ultimate Edition on Switch? Do you think they should have gone for a larger cartridge? Would you have been willing to pay $70 for a complete version on a 32 gig cartridge? Let us know in the comments down below. If this video helped you and you'd like to see more, please subscribe and hit that like button. Thank you for watching, I'll talk to you guys later.